really, really fortunate to have Yuri Tomikawa be with us today. She's got some B-Lab DNA that she can talk about, and she's a Brown alum and has an interesting business history and also a startup that's doing wonderful things. And I get to brag about her in the following two ways. One is that she's been named in the 40 under 40 top in Boston MedTech or something. So
yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed you were under 40, that's a big deal because there's a lot of wonderful entrepreneurs in Metro Boston that I'm sure would be very honored to have that award. The other is a personal thing. My wife is a therapist, a psychotherapist, LICSW, and has been a very happy customer of Zencare for probably a couple of years by now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
I'm personally grateful because my wife has had such a great experience using Yuri's product. So take it away, Yuri, and she's going to take you through some bit of her own personal journey, but also talk a lot about the product development and keeping customers and that kind of stuff. So great, take it away.
Thanks, Jason.
All right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yuri, and I am a Brown alum, class of 2012, and I'm the founder of Zencare, which is the easiest way for people to find their ideal talk therapist. So I thought I would talk a little bit about how I started Zencare, where I went from Brown to Zencare, and then talk more about the product and what I think could be helpful for you guys, and then talk about self-care as a founder, because I am in the business of mental health, and I want to make sure that all founders take great self-care as well. So I'm going to be asking a few questions in the middle as well, but let's keep this informal, and feel free to raise your hand and ask questions along the way as well. So in terms of my journey, I graduated Brown in 2012, and I worked at McKinsey & Company as a management consultant in New York City for 2 years. And after 2 years of that, I decided that I wanted to go into something more operational. So consulting is great in that you get to give high-level advice to big companies and big organizations, but I wanted to get my hands a bit more dirty and see results. And that's when I jumped ship into entrepreneurship, and I didn't even think I was going to go in that direction at all. I had never considered that back in college, for example. I was deciding between working in city government versus actually starting an event planning company, and sort of got introduced to that world and really got sucked into it and just loved it. Was working on it after work hours and on the weekends, so I decided to go that direction. And I started an event planning company called Dinner Bandits, which was hosting events, pop-up events throughout New York City in these fun different locations. So that's what I did for a few months. But after about 4 months of that, and I loved it and it was awesome, I decided that that wasn't what I wanted to do in the long run. And this is something that you guys might experience too as you start companies. You might realize somewhere down the line that it's not what you want to be doing in the long run. And it is really difficult to be starting a business, so you want to love what you do. I realized that as much as event planning brought joy into people's lives, the Brown philosophy of doing social good and helping people who are in need sort of got to me, and I wanted to go in that direction. So I left Dinner Bandits and was trying to figure out what to do next. I was at a point where I was thinking of tons of startup ideas, thinking of companies that I might want to join as well, and kept thinking about this and talking to a lot of people, and just got to a point where I was really lost. And I think this question of finding your passion is something that a lot of students go through, as well as people in their 20s. And I was very much in that spot where I felt totally lost, didn't know what I wanted to do, and kind of hit not rock bottom, but a pretty low point. My boyfriend and I were arguing a lot, and I decided that maybe finding someone who I can talk to would be helpful. So that's when I looked for a therapist. And I wasn't sure if I wanted a therapist or a coach, someone who I can talk to figure out my next steps. And the process of doing so was so frustrating that it spiked my curiosity to look into solving the process of finding a therapist. and that's what led me to Zencare. So what ended up happening was, I went online to do a Google search for a therapist, and tons of different, listing sites came up, different options came up, but none of them, all the profiles on these listings, existing listings, looked the same. No one, was indicating whether they were taking new patients or not, and their insurance information wasn't up to date. So I called about 10 different therapists. Half of them called me back, and the people who did call me back were telling me they weren't accepting new clients, or that they couldn't give me the sliding scale in fees that they had indicated on their website. And this happened over the course of a few weeks, and after a few weeks I still didn't have a therapist. And that's when I decided I wanted to really take this on. And for me, building the product took a few steps. So first, I talked to a lot of therapists, and actually a lot of Brown alumni who are therapists in New York City. I talked to a lot of my friends, and just gathered more information about what it takes to look for a therapist and what people's challenges are. And then I wanted to actually start looking for therapists for other people to really get into the process. So I sent out an email to all my friends and sent out a Facebook post. Facebook is a really great way to get the word out about anything now. And asked people, hey, if you are looking for a therapist, or if you have a friend who's looking for a therapist, let me know and let me help them find someone. And I got all these requests coming in, not a lot, maybe about 10 at the end of the day, and did searches for them online, and sort of basically went through the same process that I did for myself, but for other people. And that gave me insight into what other people were looking for. It gave me insight into what all the barriers were that I hadn't encountered, because I wasn't using insurance, for example, and all these different scenarios that people are in. And that gave me a basis for what I thought a really great therapist search site might look like. From then, I took the next step, which was actually building a minimum viable product and then selling. And this is when I came to Brown, and I was living in New York at the time, but I decided Brown would be a really great place to start this. And I went to Brown students and said, hey, who are the therapists that you recommend in the Providence area? And I got a list of therapists who students recommended. And I went to those therapists and said, hey, look, I want to help Brown students find therapists off campus. Here is an example of something I want to build. And I had created a profile online on Squarespace. And it was of my therapist, who I had found eventually. She's the mom of one of my friends from Brown. And said, would you be interested in this? And that's sort of where it started. That was back in 2015, so 2 years ago, around this time actually. We are now throughout Rhode Island. We're not only focused on university students or just Brown, we're 50% university students, 50% working professionals in the area. So we're throughout Rhode Island, and we're in Boston. And we help hundreds of individuals every month find therapists in the area. And throughout this journey, I think that one of the things that I've found is you really have to love what you do, because it's a really rocky road, and I'll talk more about that later. But sort of the beginning is really important. So hopefully in the next section, when I talk about product, I can go more into depth about that. And the steps that I took that were particularly helpful. I know I whizzed through that, but does anyone have questions so far? Nope. Yeah.
How did you build the product?
Great question. So I am not a computer scientist. I had never taken an engineering course at Brown. I studied international relations and East Asian studies, so totally different. It's not difficult to build a basic website now. With Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, any of these platforms make it really easy. So I started with Squarespace, and that is a really great way to build a minimum viable product. It's not scalable. Eventually you do need to go off that and build a proper backend and everything. But one of the things I'm going to talk about is really focusing on what is the minimum you need to test your product and test demand. So that's how I built it. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
How do you make money?
Great question. So our business model is it's free for users. I always wanted it to be as low barrier as possible for prospective clients to find therapists, especially because we all started with students. Our customer is the therapist. So therapists pay a monthly or annual fee to be part of our network, and we offer professional photography, videography, referrals, obviously, an online presence, and marketing. And we only work with outstanding clinicians, so they also get to be part of this trusted network. We have a really rigorous vetting process up front where our team asks very specific questions about their approach, their specialties, and we only work with really great clinicians who are working at the highest standard of clinical care. So, in short, I make money through offering marketing services to therapists. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
So what are the additional values you provide to the therapist rather than the current solution?
What do you mean by current solution?
Current solution is online listing from other sources.
So existing listings that I had tried looking on myself? Yeah, great question. So essentially this is a question around how am I differentiated from my competitors? A few things. One, our product is better from an aesthetic perspective and a user experience perspective. In not only a design, from a design standpoint, but also from truly a user experience standpoint. And what I mean by that is we have availability information up to date. So we indicate if a clinician is accepting new clients or not in any given month. We have photos and a video of clinicians so that prospective clients can get a sense of what they're like. So this is all from like a user perspective, what the benefits are. We have a phone consultation booking system. So instead of calling the therapist, leaving a voice message, which no college student or no one really wants to do, instead you can schedule a call directly on the site, a 10-minute free call, and the clinician will call you at the time you indicated. So that's huge. We have insurance information up to date and just really robust background information. So for the user, it's a lot easier to find a really great clinician who fits what you're looking for. For the clinician, the value is that because users are so empowered to find the right fit for them, the chance that it's going to be a good therapist-client relationship and good match is much higher. And for therapists, oftentimes, they're in this because they want to help people, right? And so for them, it matters a lot that patients get better too. And when they have clients who are a good fit for them, who are choosing to come into their office for a reason that's specific to their practice, it's much more fulfilling for their work as well. The other benefits for them are this trusted network. They get to say, hey, I'm part of Zencare, which is a trusted network of excellent clinicians, which is obviously good for them. And they also get to eliminate phone tag. So traditionally, they'll be, the client will call them, leave a voice message, and then they'll call them back the next day, leave a voice message, and then you play this phone tag for even up to a week, and sometimes you lose clients that way. And other times, it just is a waste of your time, 5 minutes here and there. So what we found is that Zencare clients tend to be a much better fit for clinicians, whereas other listing sites, clients tend to reach out to 10 different therapists just because they don't know who's accepting or who's going to get back to them, and they'll just choose whoever gets back to them first. This is a long-winded answer, but those are some of the differentiators from a user standpoint and also a clinician standpoint.
Yeah, I just reviewed your website, which is really good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
What markets do you operate in, and what is your path to riches?
Yeah, so by markets, do you mean geographies? So I will explain that in different steps. So I'd say the first market that we were in was Brown University and Brown University students. From there, we branched out to Providence, and it was the Providence General Public. Then it was Rhode Island. We were in Warwick, and now we're all the way down to Newport. And then it was Boston, and within Boston, again, we started with universities, and then we expanded beyond universities. So that was sort of our path. And I would say that for anyone considering expansion, first start with one market. So the ways to think about expansion are a few ways, but one is to start with one city and one product, and then expand, with that same product to a new city or to a new geography. Another way is to start in one city or one geography with one product, and then add on features, and then at some point expand geographically. You can either expand by features or by geography, and we decided that we're going to start with this basic product and expand geographically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did you reach students at Brown initially to get them, interested in looking at the?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the very first way, and I'm not entirely sure. I think it was friends of friends, because I was only 2 years out at that point. But also, I got in touch with some of the mental health groups on campus, like Project Let's and Active Minds, and started talking to them because they were the people on the ground and they knew what was happening on campus and what the student sentiment was and what people were looking for. So they were really helpful for me in understanding, what the student mindset was like and what students' needs were. And then from there, I just met more and more people in the Brown community who were relevant, everyone who was students, and then reached the broader audience that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's your guys' company.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, that's neat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so when you expanded to Rhode Island and Boston, how did you get the word out? So did you invest in PR? Or?
Great question. I think that, so I'll say this, I'll start with this with a caveat that I don't have the perfect answer yet. We're 2 years into this company and there's a lot that I'm still learning, but what I've found is that university students love our product. And there's something about the close-knit community of universities, the fact that everyone's in sort of the same life stage, and that a lot of students are going through difficult mental health challenges or are looking to improve themselves and looking for therapists off campus. So what we found is that we tried a lot of different methods, including Facebook ads and giving talks, publications, but what stuck the most is when I was able to actually get the word out to the right communities in universities. And that was a lot of mental health student groups who are already passionate about this and who are the people who their friends come to talk to about their mental health challenges. And so going to universities to give talks was huge to these student groups, asking them to send this out as a free resource that's available to students, and then really targeting them in terms of marketing. Beyond that, our second source of referral, so our number one is word of mouth. Number two is Google. So having good SEO was also really important for us. And luckily, because the more therapists we have, the more it helps with the number of pages that we have on our site. We have videos, which are very unique, and they come up on YouTube. We have photos. So all of those things help with SEO. But also the second sort of source of referrals, or the third sort of referrals is, and part of word of mouth, is referral agents. So there are people who are sort of in charge of referring clients and patients to therapists, and this might be case managers at hospitals. It might be psychiatrists who are medication prescribers and they're helping their patients find talk therapists. Or it might be university counseling services. And we went to talk to those referral agents and said, hey, look, this is a free resource for you. Check it out and let us know. We'd love to get feedback from you. So those are some of the ways in which we started to get the word out in new markets. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
How did you find the balance between finding therapists and finding clients?
Mm-hmm. So how many of you guys are working on marketplaces? Okay. You definitely need supply first, because without supply, the demand has no value in going to your platform. But you also want to make sure that, the way I started it was, I went to therapists, got about 20 therapists on our platform, maybe it was even 15, and it was actually 2 group practices and then a few individual therapists. So it was really 2 big group practices and a few individual therapists who made up my first cohort of therapists, and I launched it. And then I saw what happened. And day 1 of launching, we actually got a user without any marketing. So I think, have just enough supply that makes your platform work, but don't go overboard with it, and then work on demand. And then it's just constantly calibrating the 2. And you'll always know, like, we need more supply or we need more users. So we need more vendors or more users. And you'll also start to realize, if you start with a minimum number, you'll start to realize what kind of supply you need more of. So maybe, I don't know where you are in your business right now. I've looked through your description of your company. Maybe it's that you realize you need more tutors, or maybe you realize you need more people who are selling products, right? So I think as if you start with a range of vendors to begin with, or supply side, you'll eventually know based on demand what you need more of, and then you can calibrate based on that. Yeah.
How have you been funded?
So Zencare is bootstrapped, but I'm happy to talk more about how I have kept financially afloat. So I was lucky in that I was working for a company before, and so I had savings from that. And then in my first year, now I'm fully on Zencare, but in my first year I did a lot of different things. I made websites for other people, and that actually was a whole business on its own on the side, and actually made a lot more money from that than Zencare in my first year. And then I also sold s'mores with my boyfriend. And that was also a very profitable business. So we totally could have s'mores, yeah. So we totally could have made it into like an insomnia cookies, but insomnia s'mores. But that wasn't the direction I wanted to go in with my personal business, so.
So you've just been bootstrapped, you haven't done any evaluation?
Nope, and it was a very deliberate decision. And I can talk more about that later in terms of balancing growth and funding for growth versus autonomy. For me, autonomy and independence and being able to build what I want without being swayed by outside investors, for example, was extremely important. So that's the decision I've made, but it could change in the future.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Molly, did you have a question?
I did. It was about expansion. In our experience, like in expanding to other schools, we found that people are more compelled when they're listening to people who have used our service. When the people who are advertising for us basically are people who are peer counselors or have been peer counseled. And I was wondering how you sort of strategically navigate that, if it's similar for you, if students who have used the product are more effective in raising word of mouth awareness about it.
What is it that you're trying to do when you say expand to other universities? Is it
in the PMHA program to other?
Okay, so it's to get students to run the program in their universities, and then they ask, can we talk to people who've done this before, or?
Basically, yes.
Okay, interesting. So, let's see.
Or at least people seem to be, if we're like reaching out to organizations, we have a quicker response rate if the person who's doing the initial reach out is someone who's like, this is an excellent thing that I have used, and not us being like, look at our product, So I guess it's also, we've changed the way we frame it a bit, but I was wondering if it's a similar.
Okay. So I think my experience is a little different, but it's also different because of the nature of our organizations. When you are going to a new university, you're essentially saying, can you do the work to launch this program in your university? Whereas when I go to a university to talk to students, it's, hey, here's a free resource. Tell your friends about it, and you want to use it. So it's a little different in that way. I'm trying to think of what a better analogy might be.
I suppose it's also like you have like the student reviews or just user reviews on every single page for the therapist. So whether that is something that you emphasize strongly, like in your advertising or not.
Yeah, great question. So I'm not sure if I can answer it, directly, but I'll try. So in terms of more users using our platform, our number one referral source is word of mouth. So I do think that there's something to be said about that, right? And if you have really strong advocates who tell their friends about you, that's going to be your best, growth channel by far, and you want that kind of organic growth. In terms of reviews/testimonials, so we don't necessarily call our platform testimonials reviews, we call them testimonials, because it's not the kind of star rating review platform that you see on many other listing sites. And that actually, there's different sort of ways of looking at it, but what we found is that people really base their decision on the video and the content of the profile. I think that at the end of the day, they care about how good of a fit they're going to be with the clinician. And for me, testimonials is really important, and we do find that testimonials play a really important part and can sway someone's decision, but it's not the reason they're coming to the site in the first place. And a lot of other information contributes significantly to their decision as well. It does increase their confidence in choosing a therapist, but I think that's slightly different than what you're asking, which is how are people going to actually adopt this platform. I think if I were in your shoes without knowing too much context, the way I might approach it is to talk to the relevant people and ask for feedback and have an in-person conversation with, I think if you find the right advocates, that's the key. You can keep banging on the doors of people who are not the right fit for you, and they're not going to respond. But as soon as you find the right person, the right advocate in a university, and it's the person with enough energy and entrepreneurial spirit and excitement about this mission of yours, they will run with it. And I think that might be part of the challenge, to find that person, because those people often have their own ideas as well, and their own organizations. But I don't know if that answered your question entirely, but I'm happy to talk about it more afterwards.
No, it definitely did. The information about the profile being more valuable was especially not what I had gone into assuming. So.
Okay, cool.
Just on that, what's sort of the content vibe of the videos that the therapist will put out? What,
Yeah.
Just like talking right to a camera?
So it starts with a self-introduction and then goes into their specialties. It's 1.5 minute video. It's very short.
Have a formula for them?
Yeah.
Just prompt them?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I mean, therapists are super camera shy. They've never been in front of a camera. Their photos on existing listings are selfies from 10 years ago at a wedding with the other half of their, photo chopped off. So we really work with them to make sure that they feel comfortable and give them as much preparation as possible up front. So specialties, maybe their approach to therapy, and then really why they love doing this and their hope for prospective clients. Yeah. So before we go into more questions, I was going to continue with some of the talk that I was going to provide. So I was going to talk about building and improving your product. And I know everyone's at very different stages here and very different products. So not everything may apply to you, but hopefully a good majority of it will. And also feel free to ask how it might apply to your particular business. So the first thing, and so I'll talk maybe about the high-level steps that I'm going to talk about. So number 1 is testing demand. Number 2 is building your product. Number 3 is measuring success. I'll go a bit slowly. Sorry. Test demand, build the product, measure success, improve the product, delight your users, and put you in the product. So in terms of testing demand, what I mean by this is to really figure out who your early adopters and customers are. And I think it's so easy to build a product that you want for yourself or you think is a good idea. But as great of an idea as you might have, if you don't have demand, if you don't have customers, you don't have a business. So I want to take a moment for everyone to do a quick exercise. Write down who your customer is. Who is the one paying for this product that you're building right now? So who is your customer? And be as specific as possible. So who is the one paying for this, and why do they want it? What's the problem you're solving for them? Okay. And once you have that, write down how you know that. How do you know that that's what they want? How many people have you talked to? How many of that specific customer type have you talked to? Have you pitched the product and seen if they would be willing to pay for it? Have they paid for it? And if you are already selling it, do you have customers who are ecstatic about your product? Okay. Anyone want to share? All right, I'm going to call on someone. So I looked through Brevité's website, and I love the backpacks. I'm curious who your customer is, and since you're already selling, it seems like, how you know that this is what they want.
So our customer is basically an early adopter in tech, or basically out of the valley at the moment, ages 25 to 36, and mostly male. I'd say about 80% male. We know this because we've looked through basically who's bought it, done the big analysis of that. How do we know? What was the second question? How do we know this is what they want? I mean, we did bottom-up research.
You talked to
Yeah,
prospective customers?
Yeah, we talked to prospective customers within the age range that we thought that everyone was from, and figure some of it was correct, some of it wasn't. Figured out who the buyer was.
And what is it that they're looking for? Why are they buying your product?
Most people seem to be buying our product because they're looking for some sort of carry solution for their photography gear. The difference is that, like, usually this person is somewhat mindful of the overall aesthetic, within their aesthetic, rather than kind of trying to blend in. And so, like, it'd be more of a fashion-forward individual.
Okay. So it sounds like it's men in the valley who are in their 20s and 30s, who are also photographers. That seems to be a key part of this. Okay. And why are they even looking for this product in the first place?
I mean, most individuals who buy expensive gear. The next thing they end up buying is a bag of sorts. It's not something that comes with your camera, but inherently if your camera costs a few $1,000s, you're going to want to protect it.
Cool. Okay. So the aesthetics, it sounds like, are really important too, but the basic is protecting your gear. Okay. Awesome. So the reason I'm asking these questions is because my guess is that there's something about this backpack that's really unique beyond the aesthetic too. That it's really taken into account how photographers travel, how they take out their gear, and as a photographer, amateur photographer myself, I love the aesthetics of the product, but I've never purchased a backpack for camera gear. And I would have loved to learn, like, why is this backpack so unique? And so maybe I'm not the right target audience or the target customer, but I think that, as you narrow into who your target audience is and your ideal customer base is, figuring out exactly why they like your product and then putting it front and center on your website or where they look first could be really valuable, because a lot of people don't know what it is that they want, and it's only customers who've purchased your product who know why they love it so much, and being able to educate prospective customers why this purchase is so valuable for them based on existing customers' experiences can really, make their decision about whether to buy it or not. So that was just one example that I was thinking of when I was looking through your site.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. The other example I was thinking of was you guys. Are you selling products or services at this point?
Both.
Okay.
Well, at this point we haven't launched yet.
Okay.
But as it's built up, we're selling both. But we're focusing as far as pitching and getting people interested is on the services.
Okay.
Although the goods element is there and totally usable, but that's more on the self-discovery end as opposed to prompting people to check it out.
Okay. So who's your customer?
Well, I mean, there's two sides to it, but initially our customer are people that have services, goods, or just the drive to work that want to earn supplemental income in their community.
So it's the vendor side.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
And who's the customer? Who's the one paying you and paying the vendor?
The person paying the vendor are people that are either interested in learning a skill or taking advantage of a service, or someone who's so busy that they have, errands or tasks that they would like to have taken up by somebody else because their time's occupied elsewhere, working or whatever it is.
Okay. Can you be a bit more specific about that? Like what kind of age range, are they in college, are they working?
So feedback for the customer, which is interesting. In terms of people that I've talked to, kind of fall outside our initial target range.
Okay.
It tends to be a lot of older individuals who are retired, who now have the time and the money
to
purchase services and skills. Like I was talking with an individual yesterday. He's like, I've always wanted to learn Spanish, and I would love to hire a college student to teach me face to face.
Okay.
I've had a lot of those interactions, and there's a lot of people who live outside the college community who have supplemental income and now have the time and the money to want to expand and enhance their lives by learning new things.
Cool. How many people like that have you talked to versus, someone who's still working versus a college student?
I can't quantify it. It's kind of amorphous. I've talked to a lot of people.
Okay.
Probably a dozen or so.
In each category, would you say?
Ish.
Okay.
I talked about it with hundreds of people.
Okay. Okay. Great.
I even write down an individual sheet.
Okay.
So I should.
So I think that some of it, intuition, like getting the information and then intuitively saying, okay, this direction seems right or not, is a good approach. I also think, though, writing it down and keeping track of, because some people are going to be more, give a more stronger impression on you than others. And you don't want that to warp the numbers that are actually, telling you something. In terms of how many people, like what percentage of this kind of people are going to be interested versus this. The other thing you want to think about with people who are, you said retired?
That was, yeah.
Okay.
They're like, well, now that I'm retired, I could do this.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in it.
Is how many of them, are actively looking online for something like this? And versus you're presenting this idea, and so they're sort of is piquing their interest. But you want someone who's actively looking for this already, or who is, actually going to be using the kind of platform that you're trying to provide, which is an online marketplace. Have they used other online marketplaces? What are the alternatives that they're already looking for? The best thing is if you can find a customer base that's going around in an inefficient way to solve the problem you're trying to solve for them already. So that's something that I might keep in mind.
Is there a useful way to kind of, in these informal conversations, to quantify it? Should I be like should I have something on my phone to like track it, or?
Can you tell me a bit about the questions you're asking? So how do you go into a conversation?
That's a million different ways.
Okay, so let's say it's me. You're interviewing me as customer research.
What do you do when you're not working 9 to 5 on Zencare?
Okay, so I guess first I would start with asking what do you do, all the background, but you already have my background. So what do I do when I'm not working 9 to 5? I do yoga, and I spend time with my friends and my boyfriend, and currently into the show Billions. So I'm a little hooked on that.
Do you have any cool skills that you would love to share with people? Anything you've learned?
I think I'm not a yoga instructor. Yoga is one of my favorite things. I also love learning languages, but I've never taught.
Sure.
I'm not so much of a teacher. I am more of a learner.
Sure, so I've always thought of myself the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I went down to Community Boating House on Sunday to sign up for classes and get a membership. Turns out that I know a little bit more about sailing than a lot of people there,
Mm-hmm.
so they ended up registering me as a volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm teaching sailing there
Mm-hmm.
twice a week to
Mm-hmm.
adults aged 20 to 60.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never taught sailing in my life,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess I know a little bit more than them, and that's the point. So now I'm giving it a shot. And
Okay.
It's been really incredible.
Okay.
So that's an example of something that I've started doing that I never thought I'd be able to start offering.
Okay.
And people are getting a great benefit out of it.
Okay.
So I guarantee that, maybe you're not a yoga instructor now, but you know more yoga than I do.
Okay.
I bet you can teach me how to do planks and downward dogs and stuff.
Cool. Awesome. Sign me up. Well, I think that's a vendor interview, right? And you really want to separate that completely from customers. And that's something, so for me, it's pretty clear because, I have therapists who are licensed professionals and then users who are prospective clients who can be anyone. I think for you guys, it's sort of anyone in the community can teach or learn, so it's sort of a little bit more, a blurry line. But I would really separate the two and keep tab of how many people you're talking to in each category, and what they're saying and key takeaways. Every time you have a conversation, write down your key takeaways, because it's very easy to have all this information get mixed up along the way. Yeah. Okay. Just make sure I get. Okay. Cool. So the key takeaways from that are to be as specific as possible about your customer base. Who is it? Where are they? What is their problem? What are the alternatives they're currently using? Are they willing to pay for this? And just talk to as many people as possible, but also make sure that your takeaways are clearly summarized. The second thing is building the product, and I'm going to sort of go through each of these a bit more quickly. So when you build the product, build an MVP. Please don't spend tons of money and tons of time, unless you're working on a medical device, which is a little bit more complicated. But even then, try to really think of what's the minimum that is going to make this, that you can put out into the market and get feedback from your customers for. I think you guys are working on food, right? So food's also a little tricky because you want to make sure that it's safe, but you can start giving it to your friends or family members or friends of friends informally and see what they say. And I can't stress this enough, especially for software companies and internet businesses. I've seen so many people spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars or even tens of thousands of dollars building a website from day one, and there is no demand for it, or the product is just not what people are looking for. And there are so many ways to get around it, right? So for example, for me, I didn't even build a website to begin with. I had an email that went out to friends to say, are you looking for this? Can I help you? for you guys, maybe you build the product, but maybe you also have, a website that says, email us and we'll connect you with someone who's going to teach you. And you can already start to test demand that way. So think of the minimum you need to test demand. Third is measuring success. So measuring the right success metrics is really critical because, and it's critical for your own motivation, for your team morale, and also to improve the product. For us, the metrics for us are how many clients we can connect with outstanding clinicians and how many outstanding clinicians we can get to join our network. It might be users, it might be purchases, it might be repeat users or purchases, and I think it's going to change over time. But if you don't have that North Star that everyone agrees on, it's going to be a lot more difficult. And the reason why metrics is so important as well is because if you have the metric as your goal every week, you're going to find all sorts of creative ways to get there. Whereas if you have tasks every week, sort of completing the task doesn't necessarily give you the result, and you always want to be results driven. So that was one of the things that I wanted to mention as well. In terms of improving the product, having, and this is from Sam Altman from YC, but having a product improvement engine where your product improves 5% every week is really important so that improvement compounds over time. And as quickly as you can build a hypothesis, test it, and then iterate on it, or as quickly as you can, see a product improvement that can be made and actually act on it, the quicker your product's going to improve, and you're going to get quicker feedback from users. So having that very fast, closed feedback loop is really valuable, and baking that into the development of your product is going to be really key too. 5 is delighting users. Build something that people love, whatever that might take. And 6 is putting the you in the product. So the great thing about being a small company is that people know you and they get to, see you in the product. And that means, your email is coming from you instead of, Zencare, who no one really knows who that is. It can be from me and say, I'd love your feedback. I'm the CEO, I'm the founder. Can you tell me a little bit about what your experience was like? So take advantage of being small and make it really personal. So that was a little bit more lecture-y, but do you guys have any questions for me? Yeah.
Well, you mentioned at the beginning that you had some advice on self-care.
Mm-hmm.
I've been balancing in my mind, trying to be very disciplined, then also allowing myself to take more time for myself. So I'm trying to wake up every day at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
But if I don't fall asleep until 1 a.m., then
Right.
it's not, I sleep until 7 or 8.
Right.
To what extent should I remain disciplined versus to what extent should I give myself leeway?
Yeah, it's always a balancing act. I think the most important things are sleep, exercise, and eating. So just don't give up on those 3 things. Just really, people, really do go sleep deprived, and you want to be as productive as possible during the day. So if you sleep at 1 a.m. and you wake up at 7 or 8, it's not the end of the world.
So then
it's much more important for you to have
maybe some of the social activities.
And the second thing, though, that I was going to mention, in addition to those 3 core activities during the day, is social. So have someone who you can rely on. And I think that, your co-founder is going to be really valuable to have as someone you can rely on. But having someone outside of the company can also be really valuable. So for me, for example, I have, and throughout the 2 years I've had numerous different people, but I have people who are also working on startups, but different startups, and I have a bi-weekly check-in with them on Google Calendar, and we have a 30-minute call and say, hey, how's it going? And it's 15 minutes of their time, 15 minutes of my time, and just bounce ideas off of each other or talk about, oh, this is what I'm struggling with. Just have someone who you can talk to like that. So it's different from hanging out with friends, which is also important, but I think someone who you can confide in, whether it's a mentor, a friend who's also working on a startup, that can be really valuable too. Other things about being a founder, so this talk goes back to investors. figure out how important autonomy is to you. You know, as you end the B Lab, you're going to figure out next steps. And for some of you, it might be trying to raise money. Some of you, it might be trying to continue this on the side of studies or getting a grant or anything. But figure out how important that autonomy is for you and whether looking for investment is the right path for you. And if you go down that route, what kind of investors are right for you. Again, for some products, you're gonna need investment. I think, I don't know who it is, but I think you're working on the cardiac, one of you guys is working on like I forget, it's like a cardiac health product.
There's two of us.
Two of us.
Okay.
Two companies, yeah.
Oh, okay. What are you each working on again? Can you remind me?
So
This is STA technology. We're working on wearables for continuous non-invasive ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. So the halo on your head.
Yeah, I saw that photo. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. And then
yeah, and I'm working on predictive optics, and I've really pivoted. So before, I think in the description it says I'm measuring cardiac output. Now I'm trying to develop high-resolution continuous imaging during surgery.
Okay.
That doesn't take as much time to set up, and it's really user-friendly for the surgeon.
Cool. So for you both, you probably need investors to build this product and everything. Okay, great. Just make sure you know, especially for consumer products, but even for you guys, this is actually something that another Brown alum who started a business told me, but money buys independence. And if you can get your company to profitability, you will have more independence over your company or an autonomy over your company. And for different people and different products, it has different levels of importance. But just if that is something that is important to you, do your research and understand what it entails to get funding for growth. I think another thing is, you're still relatively early. I guess people are at different stages, but if you're relatively early in this company or in building the company, it can be so exciting, and the world is your oyster. And then you'll start to hit some roadblocks, and you may already be hitting them, but people will say no. If you're doing any sort of sales or any sort of pitching to investors, you're gonna be told no more times than you could ever imagine, more rejections than you've ever gotten. But my friend told me when I was feeling pretty down at one point, the night is darkest before the dawn, and things will get better, and you'll learn and just see it as a learning experience and realize what an awesome opportunity you have, where you have a product and an idea that you're excited about and you get to work on it. So, have someone to talk to when that happens, but remember that, it's not gonna be forever, and also you can always pivot. It's not that you have to be so married to this particular concept or business model or even idea. And then finally, build something you love. At the end of the day, if you don't love what you're building, you're not going to continue it, and it's not going to be authentic. So if at any point you find that you are not loving it, take that as a sign and use it as a way to question what you're working on and which part of it is not working for you. So that's everything. I know it was all over the place a little bit, but I'm happy to take more questions, and I hope that this is somewhat helpful. I sent Liz a list of resources that I highly recommend. So it's just my website, yuritomikawa.com/resources. And the lecture series by YC on there is really great. I highly recommend it. And there are some other articles that might be helpful for some of you. Does anyone have more questions? Yeah.
I'm actually curious about how you balance the two different types of customer segments that you have. Like one is the clients who are looking for therapists and the therapists themselves. Like how do you, obviously you went through the experience yourself as someone who's looking for somebody, but the paying customer is actually a therapist. So how do you balance that in terms of making products?
When you say balance, what do you mean?
In terms of catering the product to those customers.
Okay, great. So you're right. I had only had the user experience, and that's actually what allowed me to really think of a product that is user-centric. To understand the therapist psyche took a lot more research, and I had to talk to a lot of different therapists and then put the product in front of them and see what they needed and what they didn't like. I think just keeping the feedback loop constantly open, or constantly keeping feedback constantly ongoing is really important. So every few weeks we'll check in with some of our therapists to ask, hey, how's it going? You know, what's working, what's not? Can we get 30 minutes of your time? And getting that input is really valuable. So that's one thing. I think ultimately therapists understand that if the product is working for your users, they're going to get referrals. And so that is the most important thing for them. To make sure that it's working for them, many therapists they're not like software engineers, right? They're not the tech savviest people. So we've had to adjust to be really a service company for them and provide really awesome service. And they appreciate that because they're very people-centric people. So I don't know if this is answering your question, but that's sort of how we balance the two. But just talking to more of both sides is going to give you the input you need to improve your product. So, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
When you're first starting out with the first 15 therapists,
yeah.
Using your product, how did you convince them in a way? Because you're selling marketing to the therapists, right? That was the selling point for them. But how would they know that you're actually going to produce on that end?
Yeah, I have to say a lot of it was luck. I talked to the right people at the right time. It was summer, which is a slower time in the therapy industry. People are on holiday, people are happier, it's summer. And also, I had the right value proposition for them. And I think also maybe people pitied me a little bit, or they really believed in what I did. But one thing I definitely did was sell from the very start. I didn't say, here's a free product, would you be willing to try it? I said, here's something that I'm gonna do. It's gonna launch 3 months later, but would you be interested for your group practice? And I think, before I actually presented them with the product and the price point, I had already talked to them about their practice and really got to know what their pain points were. So that also helped me pitch the idea then later on. But I did get rejected a lot too. I'm not saying that everyone was a yes. So I think you'll be surprised if you talk to the right people and you understand their pain points and you say, okay, that's something that you're facing, let me solve that for you. Or I know that this is something that I've heard from other therapists. Is this something that you've experienced too? Awesome, this is something that I'm producing that I'm going to be launching in 2 months' time. Do you want to be a part of it? Those are some ways to get buy-in early on before you even have a product.
Thank you.
Yeah. We can talk more specifically about your product too later on. Yeah, hey.
So I'm wondering, you focus a lot about building MVP, right? But let's say MVP.
Say that again? Building an MVP?
Yeah, MVP. So in our case, MVP would take about a few weeks or a month to do. So the way we approach it, so we are doing a fast feedback via an AR glove. So we try to identify the need in the market first before we spending time building the MVP. And so far we haven't found a strong need in the market yet. So we have stopped the process of building the MVP. Or what would you be your advice? Should we just start building MVP and test it, or should we find the need first and then build the MVP?
I think the latter. Figure out where this is even going to fall in the industry. Do you have hypotheses of who might be interested in this?
Yes, but so right now we have tested the hypothesis, but so far some of the people that we talked to is we thought they will need it, but then their answer is oh, it would be good to have it, but we don't need it. So we still are doing a lot of bottom up to figure out
Yeah, I would do more of that, especially because it's a product that's, not easy to build, and because the way you build it might change depending on who's interested in it. I think talking to more people. I think the point at which you want to start building an MVP is when you have a hunch and you have some evidence of who's going to want your product and how you can add value to them. And if you're not there yet, I think talking to more people is going to be valuable. Who are your customers, potential customers?
So we are building a force feedback AI and VR glove, and it will make people be able to touch and view objects in virtual reality.
Yep.
So our assumption is that people who need a lot of interaction with virtual objects, let's say in training where you have to like hold something or put something together, or in the education, or even for gamers. So that is our assumption, and then we tested our assumption with some people in the business who did simulation, and it's more likely that they don't need glove because they have like a alternative solution, which is just a pen. Basically, they just use a pen and interact with the object, and they do it just fine. Like they say like, oh, we don't need the glove.
Okay, and that's the case for all areas, including education?
Not yet. Just we tested some, but there's still like a few industries that we have to test.
Yeah, I think it sounds like this glove could have a lot of different applications. So I would test different industries, but also test different people within each of those industries and multiple people. Don't just rely on one data point. So I would go that route first before spending more energy into building the actual product. But on the other hand, if you show them the product and they actually use it, there is a possibility that they'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this is actually possible. This is amazing. This is actually 10 times better than what we're currently using. So it's a little bit of a balance, but I think finding out a little bit more about the different industries is more valuable right now. Yeah.
Which group came first for you, the therapists or the clients?
I knew the clients were there. I was a primary user. There's tons of people who are always looking for therapists. So I knew that demand was there. It was just about reaching them, but I needed to build the supply first. So I got the therapist first, put the product out, and then figured out how to get to users after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you were speaking to like a lot of reputable clinicians and therapists because you wanted those sort of people on your platform, and you were trying to sell them your value proposition. How did you try to convince those like entities that you were reputable enough to actually be able to execute the value proposition and that they should like trust in your ability to do that?
So I'm clearly coming at that time with nothing, right? So it's a big leap of faith, honestly, on their part. But for me, what worked for me, at least here, was I said, hey, I'm a Brown alum. I know this is something Brown students want. This is something I experienced. This is something I know other therapists like. Would you be interested? And if you can show them something and say, oh, and I'm talking to a lot of other therapists who are really interested in joining, and sort of show momentum and show that this is happening, that can work to your advantage. What are you guys working on again?
So we're working on a Chrome extension or a generalized framework for authenticating text or like news and determining context around news.
Okay. So who's your customer?
So the first customer would kind of be any end user who primarily consumes their content through social media.
Okay.
Or the internet, reads a lot of news, and then eventually we're targeting like media producers like the Providence Journal and the New York Times who might be interested in using our enterprise level API and using the platform to like show that their content is authenticated.
Okay, great. So I guess what's working for you in terms of a reputation standpoint is online, everyone's it's a sort of a level playing field. So you don't have to have this like huge, 40-year history of working in this industry to be able to sell this product. I think another thing that might be working for you, at least in Providence, is that it's so small, and if you can get your word out in one media channel, it can really spread to others. I think the most important thing when you go into any of these conversations, at least for me when talking to therapists at the beginning, was confidence and just like say, yeah, this is happening. Like, do you want to be a part of it? And also building a personal relationship, because at first you can afford to do that. Now I cannot afford to spend an hour with every single prospective, therapist in person in their office. But that's how I started at the very beginning, to really build that personal trust. And even then, a lot of people said no, but the few people who were like, oh, it sounds like you're doing something really interesting, like, I'm happy to, help you out. Even that is a really good start. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
On like the software development side, how did you transition from MVP to production? Do you like outsource developers or?
Yeah, so it's been a continuous iteration of the product. I actually learned coding because I wanted so much, and I don't necessarily recommend everyone to do this. I actually don't necessarily recommend it at all, but I wanted to learn how the website was going to function, and I thought that learning HTML, CSS, a little bit of JavaScript was going to be helpful. So that's where I started. I now have a technical intern who helps me with all the updating. And then at some point we want to build a much more robust, full-scale product. Yeah. Anyone else?
Well, I think we should let Yuri head out if she's ready.
Yeah,
Really
thank you.
appreciate your candor in talking about all the pushes and shoves and how you discovered an unmet need, and that's. I also thought it was interesting to see how you recognize this whole MVP concept isn't necessarily applicable to every type of venture.
Yeah.
It becomes part of the lexicon of entrepreneurship. It's like MVP, but there are certain product categories that just aren't amenable to that. You mentioned medical devices, drugs is another one, and you got to get it right the first time. You can't go out with something half-baked, those kind of things. So that's interesting. Not everybody seems to recognize that there's that differential. So anyway, thank you again so much. We're very proud to have you here.
Thank you. If anyone has additional questions down the line specific about your business, I know that what I provided was pretty broad, but I think I can contribute to at least some of your businesses more specifically. So feel free to reach out. I have cards that I'll give out after this, and I'll ask Liz to send out my email too.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Thank you.